Welcome back, big ballers. It's your boy MJG coming at you with a new episode of Fantasy Football Fumble with the boys from Sports Minds. Joe Birdman, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing very well, Manny. It's been a good week for me. I had a nice bounce back week in fantasy. Everyone came to play. My bench even decided to play. So I'm feeling pretty good right now. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, brother. I'm 6-1 in 2 leagues, man. Following my own advice,
Hell
I'm
yeah.
4-3 in the other league. Right? If you can't follow your own advice, why are you giving it, bro? I swear
That's
those
right.
guys from ESPN, they just give out advice, and what are they talking about? It's funny. I was just thinking about this the other day. That guy Daniel Dopp he started doing player profiles, which he never does before. And I was like,
Yeah.
they look very, very similar to someone I know. I was like, are you guys really knocking off our idea right now? I was like,
Yes, they totally
man, we're
are.
doing some right.
There's no question
Everybody's
they
like,
are.
oh, what's your top 5 quarterbacks of fantasy, top 3, or that's
Yeah.
so.
They're all
It's
doing
the
it over
same
there.
shit, different toilet.
They're all doing it over there at
Yeah.
ESPN. They all got their little
Yeah, shout
video
out to
cameras set
our
up.
boys here at Fantasy Footballers though. Those guys do it right. I respect those
Oh,
guys.
yeah. They do a
I
great
love
job.
if they could have us collaborate one day. That would be pretty awesome because I respect those guys. I think they're very smart. Obviously, I didn't agree with all their opinions going into the offseason. We obviously had different opinions. You could see our
No matter
preseason
what.
rankings. Go back in the videos, but they're pretty good guys. They know what they're talking about. But I will say our calls have been on.
Ours have been completely on. That's absolutely true. And the thing is, there's other places like I notice Fantasy Pros, they do a lot of collaborations. They've got different guys from, that have their own show just come in and they have discussions together. And I do like that. I like hearing different
Yeah.
opinions. I like seeing the guys from different shows going back and forth with their opinion. And there's good reasons why you can start someone and good reasons why you can bench someone every week for the most part. So it's cool to just weigh those discussions back and forth. But, that's what we do here too. It's why we have 2 people. So I can hear your opinion and I can give you mine. We do agree on a lot of things, but there are other times where we'll just kind of push back and have always something to back it up. And I like hearing the different opinions. It just gives you something to think about going into Sunday.
Oh yeah, perspective matters for sure. But yeah, speaking of going into Sunday, obviously some updates here. We always like to open it up here with our fancy updates. So some injuries, key injuries for the week here. Jerome Ford is out. He's listed as doubtful now, but you know how that is. He's not going to play.
Yeah.
He had an injury last week. Jalen Hurts, don't worry about him. He's been questionable, just a limited work.
He's already listed
he's
as
play.
Healthy again. Yeah. They took the Q away. Yeah.
Perfect. There you go. Perfect. So that's a good update. I did miss that. Chris Godwin, I don't think he's playing because Bills Buccaneers play Thursday. Chris Godwin has a neck injury. He tweaked something with his neck. And I don't think he's gonna play on Thursday. He's questionable right now, but neck injuries are pretty serious.
Yeah,
I
definitely nothing.
One game.
Yeah, definitely nothing. You want to rush back to if you got a neck injury,
Especially if Kyle Trask is throwing you the ball. My God, I heard some people that I know out there talking about Buccaneers are not tanking and they're starting Trask. I mean, I know Baker's questionable, but I mean, from the limited snaps I've seen for Kyle Trask, I just don't think he has what it takes. Like, is he really an upgrade from Baker? If he was, why wasn't he playing since week 1? That's what I think. I don't think that guy is ready to lead that team. And if I were Chris Godwin, I'd wait another week for Baker to come back.
And you also, like you said, it's a Thursday night game. It'd be different if he was playing Sunday. Rushing back from a neck injury a few days later does not make sense. He probably will miss, which means a huge day for Mike Evans. So keep that in mind. No matter who's at quarterback, it's going to be a big day for Mike Evans.
Always. And against the Bills defense, there's not going to – honestly, Rachaad White has been struggling a little bit at running back because he's not really getting a big workload. So, I mean, if you're going to start anybody tomorrow, I mean, start them carefully. I would start Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, James Cook, if you have them there. But, On the opposite side, on the Bucks side, like you said, Mike Evans, and that's the only guy I would feel comfortable
That's
with
all.
starting tomorrow.
I agree.
That's it.
The Bills' defense hasn't been as good this year, obviously, as it was last year, but no one you can start with confidence aside from Mike Evans.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Some other notable injuries here. David Montgomery is probably going to be out again. They say he was going to be out for multiple weeks. So he was like top 10 RB. He's missed a couple games. I think he's still worth the draft capital. What
Of
about
course.
you? You want to highlight some of the any other players that I missed over here, injuries or outs?
No, Fields is still out. He's listed as doubtful, but again, like we said, he's not going to play.
Yeah.
You know, Kyron's on IR, so you got to decide between Darrell Henderson, who's it's possible he's still on waivers for your league. Kareem Hunt, it's possible he's still on waivers. They've probably both been picked up, but just check it out, see if either of them are available. And
You have
that's
a
only
player profile on Darrell Henderson too this week as well, don't you?
yeah, and that's probably only going to be a short-term thing, but you never know, man. If he
Oh yeah.
hits the ground running and he continues producing, the chances are when Kyron's back, they're just going to go right back to the way things were. They're going to feed him the volume, and he's going to be a top 5 running back. But there is a chance they just work it into a committee if Darrell Henderson continues playing well, and I mean even Royce Freeman played pretty well. They combined for 120 yards or 130 yards or something. So it's possible they keep that as more of a committee when Kyron comes back, but I doubt it. In the short term, pick up Darrell Henderson. He's going to get the goal line work over Royce Freeman.
By the way, I don't think Kyron will be a top 5. I think he has been top 5, but I think he finishes off like where he should be because right now you have Derrick Henry in the back of the 10 there for rushing yards. You have a couple other guys that are struggling. I think he stays a top 10 running back this year. Surprise of the year, of course, but unless you drafted him, and then you took a shot in the dark and you hit a jackpot because that guy is really killing it right now, or was killing it before the injury.
Yeah, and I actually don't think he's going to be top 5 either. But as of right now, he's technically, I think he's right around 5. So he'll continue playing.
Yeah.
He'll continue playing at that top 5 level. I mean, he probably will be around closer to 10. The running back position is so volatile that it's tough to predict what it's going to look like at the end of the season. But I assume when he comes back, he's going to continue performing at that high level.
Yeah. Speaking of running back, that's why you want to speak in injuries. That's why you just want to load up. If you have a solid 4 to 5 man core, like you don't have to have 4 or 5 starters, but 3 starters and 2 flex guys, you have a really good rotation for the year. And that's how you were able to stay alive in one of those leagues. Is you traded one of those guys, Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously Pickens with me, and you got James Cook and Jalen Waddle, and it short-term success. It's worked out for you. So you're still making a run. I don't know why I kept you alive because, when you come back and the team's healthy, they're going to be rolling on all cylinders, because don't you have Kyron, a Chain, Justin Jefferson there? That's why people were trying to bury you, man. That's why people were trying to bury you in that league. They don't want you coming back.
Yeah, man. And I also had, I have James Conner in that league too. So I got 4 guys on IR right now, and I held on to all of them.
Yeah, and it might work out for you, man. It's a gamble, but we'll see. It's probably gonna be you and me slugging it out. And I'm the repeat champion for that league, so I'm coming back for that crown.
And when I made that trade, I did not expect Jahmyr Gibbs to go off for like 25 or 30 points. But that's fantasy football.
I was hoping it happened, but that's been our prediction since day one. It finally kicked in, week 7? It took 7 weeks for him to finally kick in. So, I mean, that's if that was wrong in the offseason about, I thought Jahmyr Gibbs would get it together a lot sooner than this. But if he gets it now and he ends up being RB5 for the rest of the year, I'll consider that a successful call. As long as you held on to him. Got
10 weeks left, almost.
Yeah. What about some waiver wire ads you recommend, Joe?
It's actually kind of thin out there right now. So, like I said, if there's any possibility you got Darrell Henderson out there, grab him. Royce Freeman's not bad if you're in a double flex and you need someone to fill that spot. See if he's available. You can grab him. You might get 8 or 10 points. Running back's tough to come by right now, but we are past the bye week, so you should at least have something more manageable than Royce Freeman in there. But he's a long shot that you could grab.
Yeah, and even Cam Akers is starting to. I know most guys he wasn't available in, I think, like 50% of the league. So half the people have him, half the people don't. But he's a nice little shot in the dark. He got an extended workload last week with Minnesota when they were running this, trying to run out the clock on the Niners, and they successfully did upset the Niners. That was actually a high scoring game. We picked that as one of our high scoring games last week, so that worked out really well. But they're going to continue that. I mean, Minnesota is going to ride that. Momentum and see if it works. But I think that's obviously not really consistent to expect out of Minnesota. If you have Addison, there's a nice little time to sell high on him. This is probably going to be his best game of the season because once Justin Jefferson's back, he's not going to be getting that kind of workload.
That was awesome watching him play. But yeah, I doubt we're going to see much of that again. God damn, it's getting hot in here. It's time for our hot matchups of the week. Who's your first hot matchup, Manny?
My first hot matchup, I'm going to start off with Bears versus Chargers. Obviously, there's a couple teams on bye weeks this week, but there's a lot of good teams playing a lot of bad teams this week. So you're going to see a lot of lopsided scores. So if you're looking to play like any type of daily fantasy, I say this would be a nice time to kind of jump in there and start picking some lopsided matches because if you look at them, there's definitely a lot of them out there. But Bears versus Chargers, you're talking about two teams that can't play defense, so they're going to go against each other and just light it up. Chargers are coming off 2 straight losses, so they need to get their stuff together. They lost to the Chiefs last week and then the Cowboys a week before that. So they need to get a win to start, making a run for that wild card. So they're going to try to light up the scoreboard. The Bears, obviously, Badgen isn't really a high-scoring guy. But, I mean, anytime you have DJ Moore, that does change your dynamic of your offense. So, obviously, besides DJ Moore, Dante Foreman had a great breakout week last week. I played him in some lineups. He did great. He was actually RB1 last week. And, so I think that's how it's going to be. It's going to be a lot of Dante Foreman and DJ Moore, and a lot of the Chargers just lighting it up to Joshua Palmer and Keenan Allen. So that could definitely be a good matchup there.
Yeah, and I think Eckler's going to come back with another bounce back week because, he's one of those dudes that you don't really see him have a bad week twice in a row. So I expect him to play very well. You got a lot of weapons with the Chargers. You got a really weak – I just got a trade. Did you hear my phone just go off? The ESPN chimes. I just probably got a trade offer. But anyway, you don't have as many weapons with the Bears. But like you said, you got 2 piss-poor defenses. And that could be just a shootout back and forth. Or, I mean, the Chargers might control the pace of that game and just do whatever they want. But, yeah, 2 weak defenses and teams with offensive weapons on both sides. So that could be really high scoring, actually. And my first hot matchup of the week is the Bengals versus the Niners. Kind of the same thing. You got a bunch of weapons on either side. You and I have been talking for a while now about Cincinnati's going to have, they're going to get into sync the more the season goes on and start looking like themselves, like the guys that we saw last year. And you got Mixon, you got Chase, you got T. Higgins, Burrow, and then on the other side of the ball, you got CMC, Ayuk, Kittle. Purdy may be out. We don't know yet. Debo may be out. So even if Purdy and Debo are both out this week, you still have McCaffrey, Kittle, and Ayuk. But Purdy's in concussion protocol. I don't even know what happened because I watched that whole game last week, and I thought he played the whole game. I'm almost certain. But then Debo, he's got a couple things going on right now, so he might not play. But either way, I feel like with that many good players, and the Niners defense hasn't been that great lately. It's not the defense everyone expected during preseason that everyone was talking about it's going to be, Cowboys, Niners. Cowboys are the number one defense, I think, right now, and the Niners are maybe around 10. And Cincinnati's got kind of an average defense. So either way, I don't see their defense as being a threat to these high-powered offenses.
Yeah, I could definitely see that as a good high-scoring week. Not because I think Niners obviously will, eventually get their crap together, right? They have been playing lax defense for sure, especially against the Vikings last week. Like, how can you not stop the Vikings? Like, that's embarrassing. But Bengals, on the other hand, have been struggling the whole season. I mean, Joe Burrow had that calf injury, and it slowed him down throughout the season. He hasn't been performing how he should. He had like 1 or 2 good games, so he's been very streaky. And they just came off their bye week, so
they're
I think
rested
they had
now.
some time to get there. Yeah, they're well rested, so you're going to see them kind of get it together. I'm sure they put the extra work in. And I actually was going to make some offers for T. Higgins in other leagues because I was like, I could buy low on him right now while he has no value because I think he's only averaging like 7 points a game right now. So you could definitely get buy low on him. But obviously you are going to see probably some Jamar Chase love because Niners can't cover the big-time receivers. Maybe a little bit Joe Mixon, but definitely a heavy dose of CMC. Like CMC is going to be the guy. He's going to get 2 or 3 touchdowns. So if you got him in any of your leagues, congratulations. You probably won that league. So, but yeah, I could definitely see that being a high-scoring game for sure.
I actually threw out an offer for T. Higgins 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, Roschon Johnson for T. Higgins. They turned it down, and I understand, but I thought like that was kind of even. But I think a lot of people are still hopeful about T. Higgins. It is only week 7, going into week 8. And I think a lot of people have that same mindset where they're like, hey, the Bengals are going to get it together. I'm not worried about it just yet. So
I also think some of that is just people not willing to sell high on a guy they drafted in the 4th or 5th round.
Of course, that's
like
part
that
of
high,
it too,
like,
yeah.
And those are guys I wasn't really big on. Like, I'm a big time Eagles fan, obviously. Like, I love Devontae Smith, but Devontae Smith going in the 4th to me didn't make sense. Neither did T. Higgins, neither did DK Metcalf. Like, all those guys bunched up. Chris Olave, like all these guys were bunched up in that particular round. And then people were like all big on DeAndre Hopkins. And then even Calvin Ridley, right? He looked great in the offseason. These were all the guys that were bunched up around the 4th round, like 4th round wide receivers. And I was like, screw all those guys. And I skipped straight down to DJ Moore. And that was the guy I was going for in the 4th round. It
when you were looking at like 5th, 6th round, you got people, you had people like Mike Evans coming off in like the 5th or 6th round, then Christian Kirk.
Yeah.
And then even like the 7th round, you had like
Michael
Pickens. And Pittman, yeah.
No, Pickens was earlier, but Pittman definitely, yeah. And that bunch right there, they were right next to each other. Evans, Pittman, all those guys are right there in the 6th and 7th round. Christian Kirk, and these are some of the best, most consistent ones. And I was like, man, that's the sweet spot of Pickens, or like picking players right there.
That's right.
You kind of learn that every year. It's kind of like I noticed that if we're not big weekly fantasy guys by any means. But I started seeing patterns this past week when it came to like pricing for DraftKings, right? And I started seeing certain players. What they do is they put similar players in similar price points, right? But then they have certain players that are like supposed to get a breakout game that are in that similar price pool. Like obviously you can't predict everybody's going to be successful, right? Because that's football can be unpredictable. But like, for example, last week they had like Joshua Palmer, Josh Downs, and they had there was another guy, Rashee Rice. They were all priced around the same. They were like 4,800 on DraftKings. And I was like, all these guys, any one of these guys could hit. And I was like, that's a nice little cluster of players there. And it turns out that all those were some of the highest scoring wide receivers last week. So I've noticed that that's how the leagues were. You got to get that bounce back. You got to find that nice little pool of players, and that's how you really build your team up for success.
And those price points are a good reference when you're trying to decide who to start. Sometimes you can actually look at that and you'll see, hey, they've got Deontay Foreman costing way more than I expected. Maybe they are a little more aware of the defense he's up against. Just little things like that. If you see that Donta Foreman costs $1,000 more than another guy you were considering, it gets in your head a little bit where you start thinking about it. Well, maybe this is a better matchup. Maybe I should play him. So I like to just look at it for that reason too, just to see the price points and what the experts actually think, these guys that not like the fantasy football experts, but the guys that are
analytics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's why last week I was looking at it. You had guys like Stephon Diggs, Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're all over 8,000. And I was like, and Travis Kelce was like at 8,000 as well. And these guys were like 8,500, 9,000. And like Amon-Ra was 8,000 against a tough defense. And I was like, you know what? I like Kelce's chance, and play him as, the 8,000, the big money buy. So you kind of start identifying those stacks you should have. But anyways, we're not daily fantasy guys. We're not weekly fantasy guys. We're season long fantasy guys. So, right. Just some observations. Now, which as far as my next hot matchup of the week, I went with the game I thought would be great. You talked about our player about them earlier, but it's going to be the Rams versus the Cowboys. I think that's going to be a high scoring game. Two solid defenses, but obviously they're both trying to make a playoff run. Rams are trying to go for the wild card, or the division's up for grabs now because the Niners just dropped their second straight one. So I mean, they could sneak up in there and get a win, and they're only one game behind the Niners, and that's just a division matchup, So and they play the Niners twice this year, so definitely could be a possibility the way it's looking right now. Is it probable? Yeah, but is it likely? No. So, but regardless, I think this game's going to be a nice one. Obviously, you have Darrell Henderson. I think he'll get points, but I think it's going to be a heavy dose of Puka Nacua and, Cooper Kupp against the Cowboys because Cowboys are going to have to pass rush, right? And they're going to stop. They're good. Their front seven's good against a run. So the only way that the Rams are going to move the ball is through the air. And, of course, they'll be able to punch it in with Henderson at the end. But you're not going to expect a breakout game for Henderson. What you're expecting is for those other two guys. So I expect that on that side. And then on the Cowboys side, they're just going to figure out how to move the ball because I think you run it on the Rams. So maybe it's a big Tony Pollard day. He hasn't been really living up to the hype yet.
I would love to see that. And I'm sure CeeDee Lamb will have a good day. And the thing is, I imagine, I could be wrong about this, but I imagine that the Cowboys are going to kind of control the pace of the game. They're probably going to be winning and then, giving plenty of volume to Pollard, but still having enough pass catchers to move the ball in the air. And then I think it's possible that the Rams are playing from behind. They might have a real hard time running the ball, so they might lean on Puka and Cooper. And why not? If they're going to be playing from behind, they're going to be throwing the ball. But they're going to be throwing the ball regardless, and they've got two of the best receivers in the league.
Oh, yeah. And what's your next hot matchup of the week?
Well, my second one is the Steelers versus the Jags. The Steelers have been looking a lot better than anyone expected, myself included. I might say differently at the beginning of the season, but I wasn't expecting. I know that they're always going to stress me out, but they've been looking better lately. They played well against the Rams last week, and the defense is shaky, but Pickett's looked a little bit better. Pickens has looked really good. The last 3 weeks, he's looked solid, and he's had a few games this year where, real high ceiling, and Deontay Johnson's back. And, with Deontay Johnson, even Najee and Jaylen Warren looked all right last week. So I feel like they have enough pieces to keep the ball moving. They have been playing better. Freiermuth's still out, but on the other side of the ball, you've got Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence, who's been playing better. ATN looks like a beast. And Christian Kirk, as consistent as they come. And you still got Ridley in the mix and Evan Ingram in the mix. I feel like you've got enough guys on both sides to keep the ball moving, keep the game close. And a close game typically will lead to higher points. I don't see this being a defensive battle, even though the Steelers defense has, a lot of rock solid players. Like Watt made an incredible play last week. It's quite possible that the Steelers defense really steps it up. But I still think with a good Jags defense and a good Steelers defense, that their offensive pieces are enough to keep the ball moving back and forth.
Yeah, I agree. That could definitely be a good game. As far as high scoring, I think Jags offense has been on fire. And if you look at Travis Etienne, he's had 2 touchdowns in each of the last 3 games. That's all of his touchdowns for the year. He has 6 of them. He's been on a tear. If you have him, obviously you're loving it. Trevor Lawrence finally had a solid game last week. He was actually carried by that Christian Kirk 50-yard touchdown to pretty much ice the game. That was awesome. I played him and it worked out. But yeah, it was good to see that. Obviously, they have all the wide receivers. Kirk, maybe Ridley has a big game. Evan Ingram, who knows who's going to catch it. But Kirk is always going to get his. Kirk and Etienne 100% will get theirs. And on the other side, Steelers, George Pickens. Starting to put together some consistent games. That's back-to-back good weeks, 20-plus or almost 20-point weeks.
Yeah.
So they're really learning how to get him the ball, get him involved. That's your playmaker. Get him the ball. Deontay Johnson helps open it up underneath. And then Pickens goes, deep, or, he's winning the red zone possessions. So they're going to keep feeding him. Najee finally had a good game. First one all season, Najee Harris.
Finally found the end zone, yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely see that being, them being able to move the ball just slightly on the ground, but they're going to move the ball for either team that's going to be passing. So that could definitely be a high-scoring game. It's getting cold in here, Joe. Do you feel that?
Oh, yeah.
It's the Big Balls cold call of the week.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. And what's your first cold call, Joe? Who do you think is going to be an absolute shit show this week?
I think this is very, very, very obvious. The Falcons versus the Titans. We don't even really need to explain why. But, there's virtually zero offense on either side of the ball, aside from Derrick Henry and Bijan Johnson. Or I'm sorry, Bijan Robinson. So, Bijan. So beside Derrick Henry and Bijan, you don't have anyone that you're going to start. You can't play DeAndre Hopkins. He's had 1, maybe 2 good games. I'm not even sure who's playing at quarterback. And then on the Falcons, you've got Desmond Ridder, who's, he has not been playing well all season. He's had flashes of, good games here and there, but overall, there's nobody that you want to play on either side of the ball aside from the running backs. And that's a recipe for a slow game by itself. If you're just going to lean on the run, if both teams are just going to rely on the run game for the duration of the game, then that's already low scoring. And then to top it off, the Titans' run defense is pretty solid, and the Falcons' defenses look good too. So you've got these guys that are just going to be in a grudge match, a brutal, long battle on the ground, limited in the air. I would love to see Drake London have another big game, but I doubt it's going to happen. Maybe because the Titans are going to stuff the run, they'll try that, but I would not count on it. And I expect this to be a very low-scoring game.
Yeah, you're right. Both Titans and the Falcons have been top 5 rush defenses this year. So they're shutting everything down. That's the only form of offense those teams really have, or the main form of offense. So they are going to really cancel each other out. Play good defense, 3 and D. So just basically running defense. So it is going to be a boring game. But if you have Henry, obviously you're going to start him. Bijan, check to see if he's healthy. Because I don't know what his illness or injury was last week. So that probably was just, sickness. But yeah, definitely going to be a slow game and not one I would be tuning the channel for anytime soon.
What about you, MJG? What's your cold call?
Well, I thought about it long and hard, and then, I came to a realization that it's going to be the Battle of New York. That's going to be the cold call of the week. Stay away. Like Jets and Giants, 2 teams that are struggling. Like, yes, the Jets got their win. They came off their win, their bye week. They beat the Eagles. I understand. Yes, good win for them. They played good against other defenses. But Zach Wilson's not going to be able to score points for them consistently. Like we all seen that. Like he came and put a couple points in there. Most of the points actually came from Brees Hall. If we're being honest, the defense turns it over. Brees Hall finishes it. So if they can stop the run game, obviously, which the Giants have been pretty tough against the run. They had a pretty they didn't shut down CMC, but I've been watching them and I realized that they're actually a pretty tough, even though their numbers don't suggest it, they're a tough running back matchup because they like to hit the running backs hard. So you see running backs get banged up against the Giants. But that's what I've noticed anyways. So I'm not wanting to play any of them. Obviously, Brees Hall, if you have them, you start them, but that's pretty much it on the Jets side. And even Garrett Wilson just for flex points, 15 points. I think he's possible. But on the Giants, all they have is Waller. And Jets are tough as hell on defense. So guess what? They're going to shut down Waller, and then Giants are just going to struggle again. And then Saquon might have a big game. I think that's their best form of offense on the ground. But it's at the end of the day, it's just not going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, and it's a similar situation as I was just describing. You've got a running back on either side that's their best form of offense, and that's typically a recipe for a slow game, low scoring game. I do think Saquon's going to have a big week. But yeah, I mean, not really confident about anyone else. I got Darren Waller. He's going to be hit or miss as he has been all year. And I'm not high on Garrett Wilson at all. It's just, you can get, 8 or 10 points out of him, but the ceiling is gone. And Brees Hall, I think he should have a big game too. But yeah, outside of Saquon and Brees Hall, again, just the running backs, other than that, stay far away from that game, in my opinion. It's time for the shit call of the week. And I got one that was very, very difficult for me to watch because I was so high on this game. I had a lot invested in this game, and that is the Lions and the Ravens. I said that was going to be a shootout, back and forth, really close game, and it was just complete destruction. The Ravens just ran a train on the Lions all day. It wasn't even close. Amon-Ra, he had a good game, but a lot of that was in garbage time, and Lamar had an amazing game. I said that he wasn't going to be able to run on the Detroit Lions, and he ran all over them. And the Lions couldn't get anything going on offense. So I think the final score was like 28-6. I can't remember. I just know it was really bad, and I expected that to be a close, high-scoring endeavor. So that was my shit call of the week.
Baltimore scored like 35, 38 points.
Oh, it might have been 38-6. Yeah, it might have been 38-6.
Yeah, they beat the brakes off of them. but nobody thought that. I mean, I wouldn't even call that a shit call just because nobody thought the Lions were just going to have a bad offensive week. Jahmyr Gibbs had his breakout day, but everybody else was bad. Jared Goff was bad. The Lions O-line was bad. They just got sacked, I think, like 5 times. So number one sacking team in the league right now, the Ravens are. So they just went after Jared Goff, just destroyed that Lions front. And they needed a good kick in the mouth to get them back on track. So expect them to bounce back this week for sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing is Jahmyr Gibbs did look awesome. And I should have mentioned that. He had a great game too. Amon-Ra and Jahmyr Gibbs had a good game. Jahmyr Gibbs throughout the entire game. Amon-Ra kind of caught up at the end. What about you, man? What's your shit call?
I think about it. So I was like, I haven't really been making a lot of shit calls, like I just, now I'm just like going back throughout the season. Like, I know I had a big balls call a couple weeks ago. Aaron Jones been healthy, 2 weeks ago. He'll be the, lead back. And no, I didn't talk about it because big balls calls are just that, they're big shots in the dark. But man, like, I'd say my shit call of the week is not trading Aaron Jones after week 1. That's my shit call because I have lost 6 weeks of production from this guy. Have I needed it? Yeah, I'm 4-3. Of course, I could use the production, and maybe the games weren't that close, but maybe I could have, used the trade bait when he was averaging 22 points a game after week 1. So I would say that was my shit call, man. Is thinking Aaron Jones was going to be healthier than he has been, right? And this has probably been one of his worst injury years we've seen for him, and that hamstring. So
absolutely,
there's always going to be red flags for me moving forward after this season with Aaron Jones now.
And I used to acknowledge his injuries, and just because he was so dominant, I didn't really focus too much on them. But you're right. After 6 weeks, that's going to be on my mind now, because I thought Aaron Jones was coming back 2 weeks ago, and I thought he was going to be limited but still productive. And last week, I thought he was just going to explode. And I still think he's going to finish strong, but totally agree with you. That injury is going to be at the top of my mind going into next year's draft.
All right, big ballers, it's time for your favorite segment. It's time for this week's Big Balls Call of the Week. Joe, what's your big balls call?
Well, as you mentioned just a few minutes ago, the Lions are going to have a bounce back week, and I think Jared Goff is going to throw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's going to bounce back. He's been good all year. He's had, a couple bumps along the way, but generally speaking, he's looked great, and I expect him to be back in peak form on Sunday and throw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns at the benefit of Amon-Ra and Jahmyr Gibbs and whoever else wants to get in the mix.
It's funny that just for the viewers out there, just to let you guys know, when we do our big balls, me and Joe keep them secret from each other because we want to bring them up. And I was worried for a second that he actually took my big balls call, because that's pretty funny, because he's talking about so I was worried for a second. You did touch up on it a little bit, but that brings me to my big balls call. So I called last week Jahmyr Gibbs having his breakout game, 100 yards and a touchdown, being highly efficient, which he did, and he was RB1 on RB2 on DraftKings last week. My big balls call this week is he's going to follow that performance up, and he's going to have 100 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns this week, because that touchdown he had, he was looking like Devin a chain, and like the Miami Dolphins, how they just explode through the gaps.
Oh, yeah.
And then they just can't catch him, because his rush was like a 20-yard rush, and he just, like, as soon as he gained speed, he was gone. So I expect the Lions to let him get a running start more, because if you watch how the Dolphins run that cheat motion, where they it's kind of like the Arena Football League, where they have to get a running start, and as soon as they get to the line of scrimmage, they snap it. So I can expect to see that a little bit more, them running some cheat motions with Amon-Ra, like you were saying, but also getting Jahmyr Gibbs more open space, because if that guy gets open, he's going to explode. So you can expect me to have some DraftKings lineup this week with Jahmyr Gibbs for sure.
And think about, if they're up and they lean on the run even more, that could even benefit him. I mean, last week was a strange week to try to compare anything to. But if you think about just the pace of the game, if they're going to be relying on the run and trying to slow things down, then he's going to get even more volume. Yeah, he could explode, have 2 touchdowns. That's a definite possibility. And I really hope you're right, since I got him in like 3 leagues. And we'll be.
Thanks for trading him over to me now.
Yeah, I know.
I got him in 2 now.
I gave him to you in 1. I had to. I had to stay alive.
Hey, it works, man. It might have been the nail in my coffin, because I let you stick around. I should let those guys bury you, Joe. That's all right. I like the prospect of having Jahmyr Gibbs, and I got my boys too. Back. I got Pickens back. Remember, I was giving you shit earlier in the season. I was like, "Why are you taking my calls, Joe?
I know
you didn't grab Kirk."
Yeah, I know you wanted both.
Now of them. I got them back.
Now you got them.
I got both of them back.
You got both.
Damn, that's back. How fantasy works, man. This guy lost 4 people, and he had to make a trade. And I was like, I didn't even think about it until last minute. I was like, you know what? I could potentially get these guys back and buy low on them. And sure enough, at Jahmyr Gibbs. Like I think when Montgomery comes back, anyways, man, there's no way they shut Gibbs down, man. They got it.
Not now.
They got to give him his touches, especially when they realize that how one dimensional. Like, yeah, they're getting passes to Khalif Raymond and Josh Reynolds, and and trying to force some to Jameson Williams. But I think they're starting to realize Jameson is not really that dude. Like, he is not consistent. Like, he has super speed, but Jared Goff is not a deep bomb type of guy. And you already have Laporta and Amon-Ra working the middle, along with running backs working the flat. So, unfortunately, if you have Jameson Williams, he's not really going to give you that ceiling you want from him either.
I agree. And that's the thing is, like, I totally agree that they're going to, even if they're on a committee 50-50 with Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, they're going to want to give both of the guys a lot of work, but also give them time to rest. So I see them both having, a great season the rest of the time. And then I also don't know what's going on with Jameson Williams, but he hasn't impressed me yet. And Laporta has. So, the volume's going to be going to Laporta and Amon-Ra in the pass game. And it's going to be with Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery in the run game. And I see that as those four just really being dominant the rest of the season.
All right, big balls. We appreciate you coming in for another episode of the Fantasy Football Fumble here with us boys over here. We had a great time talking some football with you folks.
Always
tune in same time next week. We got back to our player profiles this week. Joe, you got any updates for us over here as well?
Just keep tuning in, keep spreading the word, share our videos, comment. Let us know, again, if there's any profile you'd like to see, any questions you have about specific players, and we'll get to you on that.
All right. We appreciate all of you folks coming in again. Thank you so much. Love you guys. Keep up the good work, and, don't forget to share and hit the follow button, folks. All right, you folks have a good one, all right? Take care. See you guys later.